Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had a blue flame quirk. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. Heat was the first language Izuku Midoriya ever learned. It wasn't the warmth of a mother's embrace, or the gentle rays of the morning sun. It was a volatile, hungry thing that lived beneath his skin, dormant and waiting. For the first 4 years of his life, he was normal. He was a small, freckled boy with wide green eyes and a heart too big for his ribcage, chasing after his explosive best friend, Katsuki Bakugo. He wanted to be a hero. It was the only truth he knew. He watched videos of All Might saving hundreds with a smile, and he practiced that smile in the mirror. He waited for his quirk to arrive, hoping for telekinesis like his mother, or fire breath like his father. He would have settled for anything: floating fingers, glowing eyes, extendable earlobes. Anything that would let him stand beside Kaken. But the universe has a cruel sense of irony. It didn't deny Izuku a quirk. It gave him a nightmare. The day the world turned blue, the sky was a piercing, cloudless azure. They were at the park, the usual hunting ground for the neighborhood kids. Izuku stood in front of a crying boy, his knees knocking together, trembling so hard his shoes scraped against the gravel. "That's mean, Kaken," Izuku stammered, raising his fists in a sloppy guard. "Can't you see he's crying? If you keep going, I'll stop you." Katsuki Bakugo grinned, small explosions popping like firecrackers in his palms. The smell of burnt sugar and nitroglycerin hung heavy in the humid air. 2 lackeys stood behind him, snickering, one extending dragon wings, the other stretching his fingers. "You're gonna stop me?" Katsuki laughed, the sound sharp and jagged. "You don't even have a quirk, Deku. You're just a pebble in my way." Katsuki lunged. It was a practice move, a right hook led by a burst of orange flame. Izuku flinched. He squeezed his eyes shut, throwing his hands up in a desperate attempt to protect his face. Fear, cold and sharp, spiked in his chest. But in the split second before the impact, the fear ignited. It didn't feel like adrenaline. It felt like a furnace door being kicked open inside his stomach. A roar of pressure rushed up his esophagus, through his shoulders, and down his arms. The air around him seemed to vanish, sucked into a vacuum centered on his palms. Snap! There was no sound of an explosion. There was only the sound of rushing wind, like a jet engine starting up, followed by a high-pitched hiss. Izuku opened his eyes when he heard the screaming. He wasn't hit. Kaken was on the ground, scrambling backward, his face twisted in absolute terror. The 2 lackeys had fallen over themselves to get away. Izuku looked forward. The plastic slide behind where Kaken had been standing, a thick, yellow piece of playground equipment, was gone. In its place was a dripping, molten heap of slag, bubbling and popping as it melted into the sand. The sand itself had turned into a jagged patch of black glass. Between Izuku and the ruin was a trail of scorched earth. "Izuku?" Katsuki whispered, his voice trembling. Izuku looked down at his hands. That was when the pain hit. It wasn't a sting. It was an agony so total, so consuming, that it stole the breath from his lungs. His sleeves had incinerated. The skin of his forearms and hands was an angry, blistering red, steaming in the cool air. The smell wasn't just melted plastic. It was the smell of cooking meat. Izuku opened his mouth to scream, but all that came out was a dry, rasping sob as the world tilted sideways and went black. The doctor's office smelled of antiseptic and lemon cleaner, a sterile scent that did nothing to mask the anxiety rolling off Inko Midoriya. Izuku sat on the exam table, his arms wrapped heavily in white gauze up to his elbows. They throbbed in time with his heartbeat. He felt small, smaller than he had ever felt before. Dr. Tsubasa, a round man with thick goggles, tapped a pen against an X-ray film illuminated on the wall. He looked from the film to Izuku, and then to Inko. His expression was grave. "Mrs. Midoriya," the doctor began, his voice devoid of the usual cheeriness he reserved for pediatric diagnoses. "You said your husband has a fire-breathing quirk?" "Yes," Inko said, her hands twisting a handkerchief into knots. "And I can pull small objects. We thought maybe a combination." "It is a combination," Dr. Tsubasa said. He adjusted his goggles. but it's a chaotic mutation. A standard fire quirk creates a layer of resistance, a thermal barrier, on the user's skin to protect them from their own heat. Endeavor, for example, can withstand thousands of degrees before he risks overheating. The doctor walked over to Izuku and gently lifted one of the bandaged arms. Izuku's fire is potent. Based on the residual heat readings from the playground debris, the temperature he generated instantly exceeded 2000 degrees Celsius. The color was blue, yes? Inko nodded, tears pricking her eyes. Yes. A bright, terrible blue. Blue fire implies perfect combustion, Tsubasa explained. It is significantly hotter than the standard orange or red flames most fire types produce. It's a quirk meant for destruction. We'll call it Pyre for the paperwork. But Inko looked at the bandages. Why is he hurt? Why did it burn him? Dr. Tsubasa sighed, dropping Izuku's arm back to his lap. That is the tragedy of this mutation, Mrs. Midoriya. He inherited the raw power of a fire quirk, perhaps amplified, but he inherited your constitution. His skin, his muscles, his bones, they are not fireproof. They aren't even heat-resistant. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. Izuku looked down at his feet, his shoes dangling inches off the floor. What are you saying? Inko whispered. I'm saying he is a glass cannon, the doctor said bluntly. He has the firepower to melt a tank, but if he uses it for more than a few seconds, he will cook himself from the inside out. The burns on his arms are 3rd degree. If he had held that flame for 2 seconds longer, the heat would have damaged the nerves permanently. 5 seconds, and the heat transfer would have boiled the marrow in his bones. The doctor crouched down to look Izuku in the eye. Listen to me, son. You cannot use this quirk. It isn't a gift. It's a hazard. Every time you light a spark, you are lighting a fuse attached to your own body. Izuku felt the tears finally spill over. But I want to be a hero. Dr. Tsubasa stood up, shaking his head sadly. You can't be a hero if you turn into ash the moment you fight. I'm sorry. That night, Inko didn't apologize for him being quirkless. She didn't hug him and cry while he watched the All Might video. Instead, she sat by his bed while he whimpered from the pain in his bandaged arms. She held a cold compress to his forehead, her eyes red and terrified. Promise me, Izuku, she begged, her voice cracking. Promise me you won't use it. Please. I can't watch you burn. Izuku looked at his mother, seeing the terror etched into her face. He looked at his bandaged hands, useless and painful. I promise, Mom, he whispered. He lied. 10 years later, Aldera Junior High was a place where dreams went to die, usually at the hands of boredom or cruelty. For Izuku Midoriya, it was a minefield. At 14, Izuku was a ghost. He walked through the halls with his shoulders hunched, eyes downcast, trying to occupy as little space as possible. He wore his winter uniform even in the sweltering heat of early summer, the long sleeves hiding the lattice of shiny, pink burn scars that spiderwebbed up his arms, reminders of the times his control had slipped, or his temper had flared. He smelled perpetually of aloe vera, burn ointment, and sterile gauze. Midoriya, stop mumbling, the teacher snapped, slapping a ruler against the chalkboard. Izuku jumped, his pen skidding across his notebook. Sorry, sensei. As I was saying, the teacher continued, addressing the class with a bored expression. It's time to think about your futures. Though, I assume you all want to go into the hero course, the class erupted. Quirks flared, fingers extended, stones levitated, minor telekinesis rattled the windows. It was a display of power, of confidence. Izuku kept his hands flat on his desk, staring at the wood grain. He felt the heat simmering in his gut, a low-level hum that was always there, like a pilot light he couldn't extinguish. Stay cool, he told himself. Stay cold. Hey, teach! A rough voice cut through the noise. Katsuki Bakugo leaned back in his chair, feet on the desk, a smirk plastered on his face. Don't lump me in with these extras. I'm the only one here with the stuff to make it to UA. Ah, yes, Bakugo, the teacher nodded. You're aiming for UA High. Impressive test scores. The class murmured in awe and annoyance, but Bakugo basked in it. And the teacher added, glancing at his clipboard, a cruel glint in his eye, it seems Midoriya is also applying to UA. The silence that followed wasn't the silence of mockery. It was the silence of discomfort. Heads turned. Eyes landed on Izuku. They didn't laugh. Nobody laughed at Izuku anymore. Not since the incident in 5th grade when a bully had tried to give him a swirly and Izuku had panicked, superheating the toilet water until it exploded into steam, scalding half the bathroom. They knew he had a quirk. They knew it was dangerous. And they knew he was too weak to wield it. Deku, Bakugo growled. The nickname no longer meant just useless. In Bakugo's mouth, it sounded like a slur for something broken, something defective. Bakugo stood up, his palms crackling with small, threatening explosions. You're really gonna try it? You're gonna go to the entrance exam and do what? Melt your own arms off? You'll die before you pass the written test. I don't have to use my quirk to be a hero, Izuku stammered, though his voice lacked conviction. There are support items. Strategy. You can burn, Bakugo spat. He slammed his hand on Izuku's desk. The heat from the explosion was hot, but to Izuku, it felt tepid compared to the inferno living inside him. You're a liability, Deku, a walking accident. Don't stand in my ring. Izuku didn't respond. He just gripped his desk until his knuckles turned white, fighting the urge to let the blue fire underneath his skin answer for him. The walk home was lonely. Izuku took the long way, under the underpasses and through the quieter streets, avoiding the main roads where he might run into classmates. He clutched his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future number 13, to his chest. It was his only outlet. If he couldn't use his power, he would understand everyone else's. He would be the smartest hero, if not the strongest. Why do I even try? He thought bitterly, kicking a soda can into a gutter. Dr. Tsubasa was right. Mom is right. I'm a glass cannon with a cracked barrel. He looked at his hands. Even now, under the bandages, his palms felt feverish. The doctor had called it leakage. His body generated so much thermal energy that he ran a constant low-grade fever. He was always hot, always sweating, always thirsty. As he walked under a shadowy bridge, the sewer grate rattled. A medium-sized skin suit. Izuku froze. A mass of dark, viscous sludge oozed out of the grate, rising up like a tidal wave of sewage. Two bulging yellow eyes fixed on him. You'll do nicely, the villain hissed. Izuku turned to run, but he was too slow. The sludge lunged, slamming into him with the force of a truck. It wrapped around his body, forcing its way into his mouth and nose. It tasted of oil and rot. Don't struggle, kid. It'll only hurt for a minute. I just need to hide inside you. Izuku clawed at the fluid, his fingers sinking uselessly into the muck. Oxygen. He needed oxygen. His vision began to blur with black spots. Panic, primal and overwhelming, seized him. I'm going to die. I'm going to die here, in a sewer, and nobody will know. The heat in his gut flared. The pilot light roared into a bonfire. If he released it now, he could vaporize the villain. He could survive. Do it, a voice in his head screamed. Burn him. No! Another voice argued. You're in a tunnel. The steam explosion will kill you too. You'll melt your own face off. The indecision paralyzed him. The heat built up under his skin, turning his blood to lava, but he held the seal tight. He wouldn't burn. He wouldn't. Clang. The manhole cover flew into the air. Have no fear. For I am here. A massive figure stood silhouetted against the light. A blur of motion, a punch that carried the force of a hurricane. Texas. Smash! The wind pressure alone was enough to scatter the villain. The sludge was blown apart, splattering against the concrete walls of the tunnel. Izuku was released, gasping for air, falling to his knees and coughing up bile and fluid. He looked up, vision swimming, to see the towering form of All Might. All Might? Izuku wheezed. The hero laughed, a booming sound that echoed in the tunnel. Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. I was chasing this slippery fellow through the sewer system. All Might moved quickly, scooping the scattered villain into empty soda bottles. Izuku watched, mesmerized. The number one hero. The symbol of peace. Can I? Izuku scrambled for his notebook, his burnt fingers fumbling with the pages. Can I get an autograph? Already done, young man. All Might held up the notebook. The signature took up 2 whole pages. Thank you? I'll treasure it. It's a family heirloom. Izuku bowed repeatedly. Now, I must be off to turn this guy in. All Might crouched, preparing to jump. Wait! Izuku yelled. All Might launched himself into the sky. Without thinking, Izuku grabbed onto the hero's leg. The wind whipped at his face, stinging his eyes. They were hundreds of feet in the air instantly. Hey! Let go! I love fans, but this is excessive. All Might shouted, trying to shake his leg. If I let go now, I'll die. Izuku screamed, his face flapping in the wind. Oh. Right. They landed on a rooftop a few minutes later. Izuku collapsed, his legs turning to jelly, hyperventilating. That was reckless, All Might chastised, though his steam was strangely increasing. I really must go. Time is of the essence. Wait, All Might. Izuku stood up, ignoring the trembling in his limbs. He had to ask. He had to know. I need to ask you something. All Might paused at the edge of the roof. Izuku clenched his fists at his sides. I have a quirk. A powerful one. All Might didn't turn around. That is good, young man. Most people do. No, Izuku said, his voice shaking. It's not good. It's a fire quirk. Blue flame. But my body can't handle it. If I use it, I burn myself. I get hurt. The doctors say I'm a glass cannon. Everyone says I'm a liability. He looked at the back of his idol, tears streaming down his face. Can I still be a hero? Can I be someone like you, who saves everyone with a smile, even if my own power destroys me? Steam erupted from All Might. The muscular figure seemed to deflate, shrinking down into a skeletal, emaciated man with hollow eyes. Izuku gasped. What? An imposter? I assure you, I am All Might, the man said, coughing up a spatter of blood. He sat down heavily against the railing. He explained his injury, the respiratory system destroyed, the stomach removed. The price of being a hero. Then, he looked at Izuku with somber, sunken eyes. Pros are always risking their lives, All Might said softly. But there is a difference between risking your life and throwing it away. Izuku felt a cold stone settle in his stomach. If your power hurts you every time you use it, All Might continued, then you become a liability in the field. Imagine you are saving a civilian, and your arm gives out from the burns. You drop the civilian, you both die. The truth was a physical blow. It is a harsh reality, young man. But I cannot in good conscience tell you that you can be a hero if your weapon is pointed at yourself. All Might stood up, walking toward the door to the stairs. If you want to help people, consider the police force. Or emergency services. They are heroes too, in their own way. The door clicked shut. Izuku stood alone on the roof. The wind ruffled his hair. He looked at his hands, the scars hidden beneath the fabric. I knew it, he whispered to the empty air. I always knew it. An explosion rocked the city. Izuku didn't know how he got there. He had been walking in a daze, his feet moving on autopilot. He found himself standing at the edge of a crowd, staring at a chaotic scene in the shopping district. Flames, orange, uncontrolled flames, licked up the sides of the buildings. Heroes were standing around, helpless. Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady. None of them could get close. It's that sludge villain! A bystander shouted. I thought All Might caught him. Izuku's blood ran cold. I did this. I grabbed All Might's leg. The bottle must have fallen. He's got a hostage. A middle schooler. Izuku squinted through the smoke. In the center of the inferno, the sludge villain was thrashing. And trapped inside the muck, struggling violently, was a head of familiar ash-blonde hair. Katsuki? The villain was trying to possess him, but Katsuki's explosions were keeping him at bay, creating pockets of air. But the explosions were starting and stopping. He was suffocating. Why aren't the heroes doing anything? Izuku muttered. They can't, a man next to him said. The villain is too fluid for physical attacks, and the fires are too widespread. They're waiting for someone with a suitable quirk. Waiting. Katsuki's eyes met Izuku's across the crowd. They were wide, terrified. They were pleading. For the first time in his life, Katsuki Bakugo looked helpless. The logical part of Izuku's brain screamed, "Stay back. You can't do anything. You're a liability." All Might said so, but his legs didn't listen. Izuku broke through the police line. "Hey! Stop! You'll get killed!" Death Arms shouted. Izuku didn't hear him. He sprinted toward the fire, the heat washing over him. Paradoxically, the external heat felt comforting compared to the cold dread inside him. He reached the villain. The sludge mass turned a giant eye toward him. "You again? I'll kill you this time." Izuku swung his backpack, the heavy books slamming into the villain's fluid eye. The sludge recoiled for a second. "Kaken!" Izuku clawed at the slime covering Bakugo's mouth. "Deku?" Bakugo choked out. "What the hell are you doing here?" "My legs moved on their own," Izuku shouted, tears stinging his eyes. "I couldn't just watch you die." The sludge villain recovered. A massive tendril of muck rose up, hardening into a spear point. "Die, you little pests!" The spear came down. Izuku had no time to think. He had no time to worry about bandages, or doctors, or promises to his mother. He had seconds to live. He didn't just open the furnace door. He ripped it off the hinges. "Get away from him!" Izuku thrust his hands forward. Whoosh! The world went silent, then white, then blue. A torrent of cobalt fire erupted from Izuku's palms. It wasn't a flicker like on the playground. It was a deluge. A concentrated beam of plasma that hit the descending sludge tentacle and instantly vaporized it. The heat was absolute. The moisture in the air evaporated instantly. The orange flames surrounding the alleyway seemed to bow down, dimmed by the sheer intensity of the blue light. Izuku screamed. It felt like he had stuck his hands into a meat grinder. His sleeves disintegrated instantly. The bandages turned to ash. His skin blackened and cracked, red lines of raw flesh splitting open as the fire tore through him. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Let him go. Izuku swept his hands outward. He needed precision. He couldn't hit Kaken. He focused the blue flame into a cutting edge, a scythe of pure heat. He slashed the air. The heat wave hit the sludge villain's main body. The liquid boiled instantly. The villain shrieked, a sound of bubbling fluid and agony, as the moisture was ripped from his form. The hold on Bakugo loosened as the sludge recoiled from the thermal shock. Bakugo fell forward, gasping for air. Izuku stood between Bakugo and the villain. His arms were hanging by his sides, trembling violently. Smoke rose from his skin. The smell of charred flesh was overwhelming. The villain, reduced to a smaller, bubbling puddle, tried to reform. You brat! I'll... Izuku raised a shaking, blackened hand. A small, blue flame flickered on his index finger. It was beautiful and terrifying. Take one more step, Izuku rasped, his voice dry and cracked, and I'll evaporate every drop of water in your body. The villain hesitated. The sheer malice, the willingness to self-destruct, radiated off the boy. Before the villain could move, a gust of wind slammed into the alley. All Might appeared, steam rising from his body, but his smile grimly fixed. He grabbed the weakened, boiled villain and slammed him into the pavement. I really am pathetic, All Might muttered, though only Izuku heard him. Preaching to you, while I watched from the sidelines. Thanks for the wake-up call, kid. The paramedics had to cut the rest of Izuku's shirt off. They sat him on the back of an ambulance, applying specialized cooling gels to his arms. The pain was a dull, throbbing roar now, a constant background noise that Izuku was intimately familiar with. The pro-heroes were scolding him. You were reckless! Kamui shouted. You could have killed yourself. That Quirk is too unstable. But you had guts, Death Arms grunted, crossing his arms. I'll give you that. On the other side of the scene, the heroes were praising Bakugo. Amazing Quirk. So brave. You held out for so long. Izuku stared at his feet. I saved him, he thought. I burned myself, but I saved him. Deku. Izuku looked up. Bakugo stood there, looking uncharacteristically shaken. He looked at Izuku's bandaged arms, fresh, thick wrappings that went all the way to his shoulders this time. I didn't ask for your help, Bakugo grit out. And I didn't need it. Don't look down on me just because you finally decided to use your freakish fire. He turned and stomped away, but his shoulders were hunched. He didn't look back. Izuku sighed and stood up. The paramedics cleared him to go home, warning him to see his specialist immediately. The walk home was slower this time. Every step jarred his burns. I am here! All Might slid out from an alleyway, striking a pose before coughing up blood and reverting to his skeletal form. All Might? Izuku blinked. Wait, you should be at the hospital. Or the police station. I shook off the reporters, All Might said, wiping his mouth. I have something to say to you, young Midoriya. Izuku looked down. If you're going to scold me too, I've heard enough. I know. I'm a liability. No, All Might said firmly. Izuku looked up. Top heroes have stories about them from their school days, All Might said, looking at the sunset. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. Izuku's eyes widened. That happened to you today, didn't it? Yes, Izuku whispered. You were the only one who acted. You, the boy with the power that hurts him. You ignored the pain to save a life. All Might stepped closer. The setting sun cast long shadows, but the hero's eyes burned with intensity. I told you earlier that you couldn't be a hero. I was judging you based on your limitations. But I watched you today. I saw a boy willing to burn himself to ash if it meant saving one person. All Might pointed a finger at Izuku. It is true your body is weak. Your quirk is destructive to yourself. If you fight like you did today, you will have a short career. Izuku flinched. However, All Might continued, his voice gentler. Strength can be built. Resistance can be trained. You have the heart of a hero, Izuku Midoriya, and the heart is the one muscle that cannot be trained in a gym. Izuku felt the dam break. He fell to his knees, clutching his chest, sobbing into the pavement. I can help you, All Might said, crouching down. I cannot change your genetics. I cannot make your fire cold. But I can teach you how to build a vessel strong enough to hold it. I can teach you how to be a hero who survives. He held out a hand, large, scarred, and comforting. So, what do you say? Do you want to walk this path, even if it burns? Izuku looked up, tears streaming down his face, the blue embers of his quirk flickering faintly in his eyes. Yes, Izuku choked out. Yes, I do. The diagnosis of a hero is rarely written in ink. It is usually written in scar tissue. For Izuku Midoriya, the scars were already there, pink and shiny against his pale skin, a roadmap of a power that hated its vessel. 2 days after the sludge villain incident, Izuku sat on a park bench facing the ocean, the salt spray sticking to his face. His arms were heavily bandaged, encased in compression sleeves that Recovery Girl, the youthful heroine who had treated him at the scene, had insisted upon. Next to him sat a skeleton of a man. Toshinori Yagi, known to the world as All Might, looked nothing like the Colossus who had punched the sky clean. He wore a baggy yellow suit that hung off his sharp shoulders like laundry on a wire line. So, All Might began, his voice raspy but carrying a weight that commanded attention. You want to enter UA High School? Yes, Izuku said, his hands clenched in his lap. He could feel the phantom heat in his palms, a memory of the blue inferno. I know what you said on the roof. I know I'm a liability. But my body moved. I can't explain it. I just knew I had to do something, and that, All Might said, leaning forward, is why I am here. That instinct is the prerequisite for a hero. However, All Might paused. He looked at Izuku with a profound sadness in his sunken eyes. I possess a power called One for All. It is a torch passed down from generation to generation, accumulating strength. I am looking for a successor. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. Is he going to offer it to me? But I cannot give it to you, young Midoriya. The hope that had flared in Izuku's chest was extinguished instantly, replaced by a cold hollow. I see, Izuku whispered. Because I'm broken. Because you are full, All Might corrected gently. One for All enhances the physical abilities of the user to godlike levels. But it requires a vessel capable of withstanding immense pressure. He gestured to Izuku's bandaged arms. Your cup is already overflowing with your own power, my boy. Your quirk, Pyre, is a volatile, chaotic mutation. It generates energy your body cannot naturally contain. If I were to add the stockpile of One for All to your system, you wouldn't just break. All Might's expression turned grim. You would detonate. It would be a nuclear meltdown. You would die before you could throw a single punch. Izuku stared at his hands. It made sense. Cruel, undeniable sense. He was a glass cannon. You don't load a glass cannon with gunpowder meant for a battleship. Then, how can you help me? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. If you can't give me power, and I can't use my own. I can't give you power, All Might stood up, casting a long shadow over the boy. But I can give you a container. He pointed a long, bony finger at Izuku's chest. Your problem isn't that your fire is too hot. It's that your furnace is made of tin. You are cooking your internal organs because your body lacks the density and the conditioning to vent that heat. You are a sports car engine inside a bicycle frame. All Might grinned, and for a second, the shadow of the symbol of peace flickered over his skeletal face. I will not give you a quirk. I will give you a regimen. For the next 10 months, until the UA entrance exam, we will rebuild your body from the ground up. We will turn that glass cannon into iron. We will teach you not just to burn, but to cool. To endure. To survive. Izuku looked up. He didn't see pity in All Might's eyes. He saw a challenge. I'll do it, Izuku said, standing up. The pain in his arms flared, but he ignored it. I'll do whatever it takes. Month 1, the garbage heap. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a graveyard of memories. Tires, broken refrigerators, rusting cars, and mountains of household trash clogged the coastline, choking the sand under tons of neglect. This, All Might announced, spreading his arms wide, is your gym. Izuku stared at the mountain of trash. The smell was atrocious. Rotting fish, wet cardboard, and rust. You want me to clean it? I want you to move it, All Might corrected. He pulled out a stack of papers. I have designed a training schedule specifically for your condition. This is the American Dream Plan, Cobalt Edition. He handed the papers to Izuku. Izuku scanned them, his eyes widening. 5 to 7 o'clock, heavy lifting, haul large debris. 7 to 8 o'clock, hypothermic conditioning, ice bath immersion. 8 to 1600 hours, school. 1630 to 1830, interval running, wearing weighted vest. 1830 to 1930, heat venting meditation. 1930 to 2030, nutrient intake, high caloric, electrolyte dense. Heat venting meditation? Izuku asked. Your quirk relies on emotion and heart rate, All Might explained, sitting on top of a crushed refrigerator. When you get excited, angry, or scared, your core temperature spikes. You ignite. We need to train your autonomic nervous system. You must learn to lower your heart rate at will. You must learn to exist in a state of calm, even when you are exerting yourself. The first week was hell. Izuku wasn't just weak, he was injured. His arms were still healing from the sludge incident. He couldn't lift anything with his hands yet, so All Might tied ropes around a massive truck tire and attached them to Izuku's waist. Pull, young Midoriya. Use your legs. Your back. Izuku strained against the weight, his boots sinking into the soft sand. Sweat poured down his face. His body temperature began to rise, not from his quirk, but from exertion. But to his traumatized body, heat was heat. Beep. 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 The heart rate monitor on his wrist, a gift from All Might, flashed red. 160 BPM. Core temp rising. Stop! All Might barked. Izuku collapsed into the sand, gasping for air. Steam literally rose from his skin, curling off his shoulders like smoke. Your temp is too high, All Might said, checking a thermal scanner. Into the water. Now, Izuku dragged himself into the ocean. The February water was freezing, biting at his skin. He hissed as the cold seawater hit his overheated body. Regulate your breathing, All Might instructed from the shore. Visualize a radiator. You are not holding the heat in. You are letting it pass through you. Izuku closed his eyes, shivering violently. I'm not a bomb, he told himself. I'm an engine. Intake. Exhaust. Intake. Exhaust. Month 4, the boiling point. Spring arrived, bringing warmer weather and higher humidity. For most, it was pleasant. For Izuku, it was a torment. The ambient temperature made it harder for him to cool down after training. He was stronger now. The baby fat was melting away, replaced by lean, corded muscle. He could haul a refrigerator on his back across the soft sand without collapsing. But the progress with his quirk was agonizingly slow. Dr. Tsubasa had been right about the leakage. Izuku ran hot. His resting body temperature was nearly 38 degrees Celsius, 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit. When he exercised, it spiked to 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit. At 42 degrees Celsius, human proteins begin to denature. That was his red line. One afternoon, while trying to move a rusted sedan chassis, Izuku slipped. The jagged metal sliced his leg. The pain caused a spike in adrenaline. Whoosh! Blue flames erupted from his shoulders and elbows, jetting out uncontrolled. The sudden release of energy blasted the car chassis backward, but the recoil slammed Izuku face first into the sand. He screamed. The fire had only lasted a second, but his shirt was incinerated, and the skin on his back was blistering. All Might was there in an instant, dousing him with a bucket of ice water kept nearby for emergencies. "I can't do it," Izuku sobbed, curling into a ball as the steam cleared. "I can't control it. It wants to get out. It hates me." All Might sat down in the sand, ignoring the grime on his suit. "It doesn't hate you, Izuku. It is you. It hurts me," Izuku yelled, looking at his scarred arms. "It's a villain's quirk. It's meant to kill, not save." "Fire destroys," All Might agreed quietly. "But fire also forges. Look at this." All Might picked up a piece of scrap metal, a rusted iron rod. He bent it easily with his hands. Iron is weak until it is put through the fire. The heat aligns the molecules. It turns iron into steel. You are fighting the heat, trying to suppress it. You're treating it like an invader. All Might placed a hand on Izuku's steaming shoulder. "Stop trying to put the fire out. You can't. You are a fire type. Accept the heat. Don't suppress it, channel it. When the pressure builds, don't cap the bottle. Open the valve." Izuku wiped his eyes. "Open the valve?" Venting, All Might said. "Instead of holding the heat in your core, push it to the surface. Let it radiate off you without igniting. Become a radiator, not a furnace." Month 8. The steam engine. By autumn, the beach was unrecognizable. The mountains of trash were now small hills. But the biggest change was in Izuku. He stood in the center of a cleared patch of sand, shirtless. His body was defined, a road map of muscles honed by grueling labor. But it was also a road map of survival. Scars, some old, some new, crossed his arms and back. "Begin!" All Might shouted. Izuku dropped into a squat and lifted a massive industrial safe. It weighed at least 200 kilograms. His muscles strained, veins popping in his neck. The heat built up. The monitor on his wrist beeped. "Warning. Temp rising." Izuku didn't panic. He took a deep breath through his nose. He visualized the heat in his gut, that swirling blue ball of plasma. Instead of pushing it down, he visualized pores opening all over his skin. Release. A wave of shimmering heat distortion rippled off his body. He didn't ignite. There were no flames. But the air around him wavered like the horizon on a hot highway. Sweat evaporated instantly from his skin, creating a hiss of steam that enveloped him. "Hiya," Izuku exhaled, a cloud of white vapor escaping his lips. He walked the safe 50 meters down the beach and set it down gently. He was panting, his skin flushed a deep red, but he wasn't burned. "Core temperature?" All Might asked, checking the scanner. 39.5, Izuku said, checking his watch. "High but stable." All Might grinned, giving a thumbs up. "Excellent. You're learning to function at fever pitch. You've turned your weakness into a cooling system." Steam venting. It wasn't perfect. He still couldn't use the fire itself without damage. But he could now exert himself physically at 100% capacity without passing out from heatstroke. He had built the iron vessel. Month 10, the day of reckoning. The morning of the UA entrance exam, the sun rose over a pristine beach. There was no trash. Not a wrapper, not a tire, not a speck of rust. The golden sand stretched out to the ocean, clean and beautiful. On the seawall, Izuku Midoriya stood atop the pile of garbage he had moved, a final, massive pyramid of scrap metal waiting for pickup. He screamed at the rising sun, a primal roar of accomplishment. All Might watched from the sidewalk, a tear trickling down his hollow cheek. You did it, All Might whispered. You really did it. Izuku climbed down, grabbing his shirt. He looked different. His jaw was sharper, his eyes more focused. He didn't look like a victim anymore. He looked like a survivor. Here, All Might said, handing him a water bottle. You'll need to stay hydrated today. Hyperhydration is key for your cooling system. Thank you, All Might, Izuku said, bowing low. I couldn't have done this without you. You did the work, kid. Now, All Might pointed toward the city. Go show them that a glass cannon can still hit like a truck. The gates of judgment. Yue High School was massive, a shining fortress of glass and steel. Students swarmed the entrance, a sea of black uniforms and nervous energy. Izuku walked through the crowd, wearing his middle school uniform. It felt tight across the shoulders now. He kept his head down, mumbling to himself. Hydration levels at 100%. Cooling packs in the support belt hidden under the uniform. If I pace myself. Out of my way, Deku. Izuku froze. Katsuki Bakugo walked past him, hands in his pockets. Bakugo paused for a second, glancing at Izuku out of the corner of his eye. He seemed to notice the change in Izuku's posture, the lack of flinching. Don't die out there, Bakugo muttered before stalking off. Izuku blinked. That was almost an encouragement. Or maybe just a warning not to embarrass their old school. He took a step forward and immediately tripped over his own feet. I survived 10 months of hell training only to trip on flat pavement. He braced for impact, but it never came. He floated. Whoa! Are you okay? Izuku looked up. A girl with a round face and brown bob-cut hair had tapped his shoulder. She was smiling brightly. I used my quirk to stop you. Sorry, I didn't ask first, but it would be bad luck to fall, right? She helped him upright and released the gravity. Thanks. Izuku stammered, his face turning red. Heart rate rising. Cool down. Vent. Good luck. She waved and ran off. Izuku stood there stunned. I talked to a girl. Well, she talked to me. And I didn't spontaneously combust. The practical exam, Battle Center B. The written exam had been difficult but manageable. Izuku's obsession with hero analysis had served him well. But now, standing before the towering gates of Battle Center B, the real test began. President Mike had explained the rules: destroy robots to earn points. 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers. And the 0-pointer, a massive obstacle to be avoided. Izuku wore a simple green tracksuit he had bought for the occasion. It was made of heat-resistant synthetic fiber, but he had modified it, cutting holes in the armpits, behind the knees, and along the spine to allow for maximum heat venting. He wore thick, fireproof gloves and heavy combat boots. He looked around. The other examinees looked confident. Some had mutation quirks, others were stretching. Hey, look at that guy, someone whispered. Is he wearing winter gear? It's like 20 degrees out. Maybe he has an ice quirk? Izuku ignored them. He was doing breathing exercises. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Start. President Mick's voice boomed from the tower. There are no countdowns in real battles. Go! 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 The crowd hesitated, but Izuku moved. His legs, strengthened by hauling trucks through sand, exploded into action. He was the first one through the gate. Target acquired. A 1-pointer, a wheeled drone, rounded the corner. Target lock. It chirped. Izuku didn't slow down. Don't use the fire, he reminded himself. Not yet. Save the heat bar. He sprinted at the robot. As it raised its mechanical arm to strike, Izuku slid on his knees, ducking under the swing. He channeled a tiny, microscopic fraction of his quirk into his right fist, just enough to superheat the air around his knuckles. Iron fist. He punched upward into the robot's exposed wiring under the chassis. The heat softened the metal casing instantly, allowing his fist to penetrate deep into the machinery. He ripped his hand back, tearing out a handful of melting wires. The robot sparked and powered down. 1 point, Izuku panted, scrambling to his feet. He kept moving. He was fast. He used the urban environment, wall running, a skill learned from chasing trash in the wind to gain height. A three-pointer appeared, a massive, tank-like robot. It fired a rubber bullet at him. Izuku dodged, but the robot was fast. It cornered him against a building. Physical attacks won't work on that armor. It's too thick. He had to use it. Just a burst. Izuku planted his feet. He took a deep breath. He visualized the valve on his elbows. Jet propulsion. He threw his left elbow back and released a concentrated blast of blue fire. The force acted like a rocket thruster, propelling his right fist forward with terrifying speed. Smash! His fist collided with the robot's face. The combination of the rocket-assisted punch and the heat transfer was devastating. The robot's head crumpled inward, metal fusing together. Izuku recoiled, shaking his left arm. The sleeve was smoking. The skin felt tender, like a bad sunburn. Temp, 40.5 degrees Celsius. Venting. Steam hissed from the cutouts in his suit. He was overheating, but he was still in the green zone. 28 points. He counted, scanning for the next target. The exam became a blur of motion and heat management. Izuku was efficient. He targeted joints, sensors, and exposed wiring. He used his fire only for mobility, short bursts from his feet to leap gaps, or from his elbows to add kinetic force to his strikes. By the 10-minute mark, he had 45 points. A respectable score. But he was flagging. His vision was starting to swim. His mouth was dry as bone. I need water, he thought, wiping sweat from his eyes. My radiator is running dry. Suddenly, the ground shook. A shadow fell over the city. The examinees stopped fighting. Everyone looked up. Rising from the center of the mock city was a monstrosity. The zero-pointer. It was taller than the skyscrapers, a gargantuan machine of green metal and malice. It punched a building, sending debris raining down on the streets. That's the obstacle? Run! Run away! The crowd panicked. The examinees turned and fled, a stampede of terrified teenagers. Izuku turned to run too. His instincts screamed at him. Survival. You have points. You passed. Just run. Ow! A cry for help. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Near the base of the giant robot, trapped under a pile of rubble, was the girl with the gravity quirk. She was struggling to free her leg, her face twisted in pain. The zero-pointer loomed over her. Its massive tracks were grinding up the pavement, inching closer. It didn't care about her. It was a machine programmed to destroy. The other students were gone. The teachers were watching from the monitoring room, surely ready to stop it if things got too dangerous, right? But what if they're too slow? Izuku looked at the girl. He looked at the robot. The heat inside him, the pyre, flared. It wasn't the angry, painful heat of his childhood. It was a righteous burn. It was the feeling he had when he saved Bakugo. The body moves before the mind can think. Izuku turned around and sprinted toward the Titan. Hey! Kid! Don't! A student yelled from the safety of an alley. Izuku didn't hear him. He was doing the math. Physical attacks are useless. It's too big. My small bursts won't dent it. I need to stop it. I need to melt it. He reached the girl. Run! She wheezed, looking up at him. I've got you, Izuku said. His voice sounded strange, distorted by the heat waves rising from his throat. He looked up at the massive tread descending toward them. It was 10 meters away. 5. He couldn't lift the rubble. He couldn't carry her fast enough. I have to destroy the threat. Izuku planted his feet wide. He ripped off his heat-resistant gloves. They would only get in the way. He raised both hands toward the massive metal treads. All Might said I'm a glass cannon. He said I have a limited number of shots before the barrel melts. Well, I'm going to use all of them right now. Go beyond! Izuku screamed. He opened every valve. He tore down the mental walls he had built to contain the fire. He drew upon every ounce of rage, fear, and heroism in his body. The air in the street vanished, sucked into the vacuum of his palms. Azure. Flash. It wasn't a stream of fire. It was a solid wall of blue light. A column of blue plasma, white-hot at the core, erupted from Izuku's hands. It hit the zero-pointer's front treads with the force of an orbital strike. The sound was deafening, a high-pitched shriek of tearing metal and boiling air. The massive steel tracks didn't just break, they liquefied. The entire front assembly of the giant robot melted into slag instantly. The heat updraft was so intense it shattered the windows of the surrounding buildings. The zero-pointer groaned, its momentum halted as its base turned into a molten river. It tilted backward, crashing into the building behind it with a ground-shaking thud. Silence fell over the battle center. The only sound was the hiss of cooling metal and the crackle of fire starting in the nearby buildings. Izuku stood there, his arms extended. His sleeves were gone. His skin was charred black from his fingertips to his elbows. Smoke poured off his entire body. He took one breath. Is she safe? Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed face first into the pavement. The aftermath. Clear the way! Medic coming through. Recovery girl hobbled through the ruined street, her face grim. She reached the boy lying in the center of the scorched asphalt. The area around him was still radiating heat like an oven. The gravity girl was sitting nearby, crying, unheard but terrified. He saved me. He just exploded. Recovery girl knelt beside Izuku. She touched his forehead and hissed. It was burning hot. Heat stroke. 3rd-degree burns on both arms. Severe dehydration. Muscle fibers torn from the recoil. She shook her head, pulling a syringe from her pocket. You reckless child, she whispered, injecting a stabilizing agent into his neck. You have the heart of a hero, but you treat your body like a disposable tool. She looked at his blackened arms. If you hadn't done that training, if your body wasn't as dense as it is now, those arms would have turned to ash. You're lucky to be alive, Izuku Midoriya. 1 week later, Izuku lay on the couch in his apartment, staring at the ceiling. His arms were cast in heavy medical plaster. Recovery girl had healed the worst of it, the nerve damage and the raw flesh, but she had left the healing of the bones and deep tissue to time, warning him that using his quirk again within a month would result in permanent disability. He had failed. He knew it. He had 0 combat points. He had spent the first half of the exam running around hitting small bots, sure, but he hadn't kept count. And then the 0-pointer, that was worth 0. He had sacrificed his score to save one person. Izuku? Inko's voice was soft. She walked into the living room, holding an envelope. This came in the mail. It was the UA envelope. Izuku sat up, wincing as his burns stretched. He took the envelope with his clumsy, casted hands. I'll open it alone, Mom. She nodded, looking worried, and left the room. Izuku tore the seal with his teeth. A holographic disc slid out onto the table. BZZZT. All Might appeared. He was in his Silver Age costume, striking a pose. I am here. As a projection, Izuku watched, his heart heavy. Young Midoriya. It has been a week. I apologize for not contacting you, but I have a surprise. I am now a teacher at UA High. All Might cleared his throat, dropping the persona for a moment. You performed admirably in the exam, young Midoriya. However, your written score was 92%, but your villain points were 45. Izuku blinked. 45? But I thought, a decent score. But perhaps not enough to guarantee a spot in Class 1A on its own. The hologram shifted. However, the entrance exam is not graded only on villain points. How could a hero course reject someone who saves others and does the right thing? A video clip played. It was the gravity girl, Uraraka, standing in the teacher's lounge, pleading with present Mike. Please! Give him my points. He saved me. I would have been crushed if he hadn't stepped in. He hurt himself so badly, please. Izuku felt tears pricking his eyes. Rescue points. All Might shouted. A hidden metric. For your selfless action against the 0-pointer, risking your own life and future to save a fellow examinee. UA grants you 60 rescue points. The scoreboard appeared. Izuku Midoriya, villain points, 45, rescue points, 60, total, 105, 105 points. You passed with flying colors, young Midoriya. All Might reached a hand toward the camera. You built the iron vessel. You endured the heat. Now come, Izuku Midoriya. This is your hero academia. The hologram faded. Izuku sat in the silence of his living room, the tears finally spilling over. He looked at his broken, casted arms. They hurt. They would always hurt. But for the first time, the fire inside him didn't feel like a curse. It felt like a torch. I'm going, he whispered to the empty room. I'm going to be a hero. The morning of the first day at UA High School was crisp, the April air carrying a chill that most people found refreshing. For Izuku Midoriya, however, the cool air was a lifeline. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at his reflection. The standard gray uniform blazer sat on the counter, folded neatly. He wore the white dress shirt, but the top two buttons were undone, revealing the edge of a thick, black compression garment that hugged his torso and neck. It wasn't just an undershirt. It was a prototype thermoregulation suit, a parting gift from All Might and a rushed job by a support company associate. It was woven with cooling gels and heat-conductive fibers designed to pull excess thermal energy away from his vital organs and vent it outward. Izuku pulled on his blazer. It felt tight, not because of the fit, but because of the bandages. His arms were wrapped from knuckles to shoulders in specialized medical gauze treated with burn salve. The skin beneath was a patchwork of pink, shiny scar tissue, the aftermath of 10 months of iron vessel training and the disastrous, glorious discharge of energy at the entrance exam. I can do this, he whispered to the mirror. His voice rasped slightly, a permanent side effect of inhaling superheated air during his own attacks. I'm not glass anymore. I'm iron. He grabbed his yellow backpack and headed out. Izuku! Inko called from the kitchen. She held out a massive thermos. Your electrolyte mix. You almost forgot it. Izuku took the heavy metal bottle. Thanks, Mom. Inko looked at him, her eyes scanning the bandages that peeked out from his cuffs. She didn't cry this time. She just reached out and straightened his collar, her hands lingering over his heart. Be cool, she said softly. It was their new mantra. Always, Izuku smiled, though the heat in his stomach was already simmering with anxiety. The lion's den. Yui was a labyrinth. The hallways were wide, the ceilings high, designed to accommodate students with mutation quirks of all sizes. Izuku navigated the corridors, checking door numbers. 1A. 1A. He found the door. It was massive, easily 10 feet tall. A barrier for giants. Izuku stood before it, his heart rate monitor on his wrist beeping a slow, steady rhythm. 75 BPM. Good. Keep it low. He hoped, desperately, that the class would be filled with kind, quiet people. Maybe people with passive quirks. He didn't think his nerves could handle. Don't put your feet on the desk. Ha! It's disrespectful to the upperclassmen and the craftsmen who made it. Shut up, Four Eyes. What junior high did you go to? The Sticks? Izuku froze. He knew those voices. He slid the door open slowly. Inside, Tenya Ida, the strict boy with engines in his calves, was chopping his hand in the air, reprimanding Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo sat with his feet propped up on the desk, a look of utter disdain on his face. I went to semi-private academy, you bastard! Bakugo sneered. A prestigious school! Ida looked shocked. Then you should know better. Bakugo's eyes shifted. He saw Izuku standing in the doorway. The noise in the room seemed to drop. The air grew heavy. Deku, Bakugo growled. He took his feet off the desk, but not out of respect. He did it to lean forward, his eyes narrowing into red slits. So you actually came. And morning, Kaken, Izuku stammered, gripping his backpack straps. Ida turned, adjusting his glasses. Ah. You're the one who figured out the hidden structure of the entrance exam. He marched over to Izuku, extending a hand. I am Tenya Ida, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku shook the hand. Ida's grip was firm. Izuku's was hesitant, mindful of the sensitive skin on his palms. I misjudged you, Ida announced loudly, drawing the attention of the rest of the class. I thought you were just reckless, but the faculty realized your heroic intent. I hate to admit it, but you are better than me. I wouldn't say that. Izuku waved his hands, feeling the heat rise in his cheeks. Careful. Blushing raises cranial temperature. Oh. It's the plain-looking boy. Izuku turned to see the brunette girl from the exam, Ochako Uraraka, beaming at him. You made it. I was so worried about your arms. She pointed to his bandages. Are they okay? They're healing, Izuku said, managing a shy smile. Thanks to Recovery Girl. That punch was amazing, though. Uraraka mimed a smash. It was like K-Pow. And then all that blue light. It was like a laser beam. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. The 3 students jumped. Lying in a yellow sleeping bag outside the classroom door, looking like a discarded caterpillar, was a man with long, messy black hair and bloodshot eyes. He sucked on a pouch of jelly drink with the enthusiasm of a corpse. He stood up, shedding the sleeping bag. He wore black fatigues and a gray scarf wrapped loosely around his neck. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the man deadpan. Time is a finite resource. You kids aren't rational enough. He walked to the podium, his gaze sweeping over the class. It lingered for a fraction of a second on Izuku, specifically on his bandaged hands. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Put these on and meet me on the grounds. He pulled a blue gym uniform out of his sleeping bag and tossed it onto the desk. The assessment. The locker room was a chaotic mess of boys changing and bragging about their quirks. I can shoot a laser from my navel. A blonde boy twinkled. Man, that's flashy. I just get hard. A redhead with sharp teeth grinned, hardening his arm into rock. Kirishima Aijiro. Nice to meet ya. Izuku changed in the corner, turning his back to the others. He peeled off his dress shirt carefully. Whoa, dude. Izuku flinched. Kirishima was staring at his back. The scars on Izuku's back weren't from the entrance exam. They were older, from the sludge villain, from training accidents, from childhood flare-ups. A map of jagged discoloration against his pale skin. Gnarly scars, Kirishima said, not with disgust, but with a strange sort of respect. You been in a lot of fights? Something like that, Izuku murmured, pulling the thick blue pea shirt over his head. It was loose-fitting, which was good. He adjusted his cooling sleeves underneath. Midoriya, right? Kirishima slapped him on the back. Izuku winced but smiled. You're the blue fire guy. I saw the crater at the exam site. That was manly as hell, thanks, Izuku said, feeling a strange warmth that wasn't thermal. Manly? That's a new one. They headed out to the pea grounds. The sun was high now, the air shimmering slightly over the asphalt. Aizawa stood with a clipboard, looking bored. A quirk assessment test? The class chorused. What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? Uraraka asked. If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for frilly niceties, Aizawa said coldly. UA is known for its freestyle educational traditions. That applies to the teachers as well. He looked at Bakugo. Bakugo, you finished first in the entrance exam. In junior high, what was your best result for the softball throw? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk, Aizawa tossed him a ball. Anything goes as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He stretched his arms, a feral grin spreading across his face. He glanced back at Izuku. Watch this, Deku. This is what real power looks like. Controlled. Precise. Deadly. Die. Bakugo swung his arm. An explosion roared from his palm, propelling the ball into the stratosphere. A shockwave of heat and dust rolled over the class. Izuku shielded his eyes, measuring the heat instinctively. Flashpoint, 400 degrees. Orange flame. Force directed outward. Aizawa held up his device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! 700 meters? That looks so fun. We can use our quirks as much as we want? Awesome! The class was buzzing. Izuku, however, felt a drop of cold sweat roll down his spine. He saw the look in Aizawa's eyes. It wasn't amusement. It was annoyance. Fun, huh? Aizawa lowered the device. You have 3 years to become a hero. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? He grinned, a terrifying expression that didn't reach his eyes. All right. Whoever ranks last in total score will be judged to have no potential, and will be punished with immediate expulsion. The air left the group. Expulsion? Uraraka cried. But it's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters, massive accidents, villain attacks. Calamities don't wait for things to be reasonable, Aizawa retorted. It's our job to correct that. If you thought this was going to be a fun hangout at McDonald's, you're mistaken. He lifted a finger. Welcome to the Department of Heroics. Izuku swallowed hard. His throat clicked. Last place gets expelled. He looked at his hands. If he used his quirk, really used it, he could top the charts. But he would burn. He would damage his arms again, maybe permanently this time. But if he held back, he would be last. Without his quirk, he was just a fit teenager. Compared to engines, zero gravity, and explosions, he was nothing. He looked at Aizawa. The teacher was staring at him again. Aizawa held a file in his hand. Izuku's name was on the tab. Inside, highlighted in red, was the medical warning, Quirk, Pyre. Threat level high. User acts as a biological heat sink with insufficient venting. Usage results in rapid self-destruction. Aizawa closed the file. A hero who destroys himself to save one person is just a suicide with extra steps, the teacher thought. If he can't modulate, he's gone. Test 1, 50-meter dash. On your mark. Izuku stood next to Bakugo. Don't get in my smoke, Deku, Bakugo hissed. Get set. Gunshot. Bakugo launched himself backward with explosions, flying across the track. Burst speed. Izuku didn't use fire. He couldn't risk overheating this early. He relied on the muscles built hauling trash on Dagoba Beach. He sprinted, his boots pounding the track. Bakugo crossed in 4.13 seconds. Izuku crossed in 7.02 seconds. Slow, Bakugo scoffed as Izuku panted, wiping sweat from his brow. I'm saving it, Izuku muttered. Saving what? Your funeral rites? Test 2, grip strength. Izuku squeezed the device. 56 kilograms. Next to him, a massive boy with multiple arms, Shoji, squeezed 540 kilograms. Izuku sighed. Average. I'm just average. Test 3, standing long jump. This was it. He needed points. Izuku stood at the line. He looked at Aizawa. Just a burst. Controlled. Like All Might showed me, he crouched. As he sprang upward, he snapped his elbows back. Pyre, microjet. Two distinct, sharp hisses of blue flame erupted from his elbows. It wasn't an explosion, it was propulsion. It shoved his body forward through the air. He cleared the sandpit entirely, rolling to a stop on the grass. Whoa! Did you see that fire? It was blue. A boy with yellow hair and a lightning bolt streak, Kaminari exclaimed. Blue flame? Another student, a boy with hair split equally between white and red, narrowed his gray and blue eyes. Shoto Todoroki watched Izuku with a sudden, intense focus. Izuku stood up, checking his arms. The cooling sleeves were warm, but not burning. Temp, 38.2 degrees Celsius. Acceptable. Aizawa noted the distance on his clipboard without expression. Test 4, repeated side steps. Mineta, the great boy, dominated this. Izuku used his physical stamina to keep a high pace, but without a quirk assist, he was middle of the pack. Test 5, the ball throw. This was the main event. Uraraka had just scored infinity, plunging the class into chaos. Infinity? That's insane. Now, it was Izuku's turn. He walked into the circle. His heart was hammering. 110 BPM. Warning. Vent. He took a deep breath, exhaling a visible wisp of steam. He held the ball. He knew the scores. He was hovering near the bottom. If he didn't pull off a miracle here, he was going home. And going home meant giving up on All Might, on his mom, on everything. I have to use it. A big one. Just one big blast. He remembered the feeling of the zero-pointer. The power. The pain. If I break my arm, so be it. I can't be expelled. Izuku winded up. He channeled the heat. He felt the furnace door open. The blue light began to bleed through his shirt, illuminating his veins like glowing cobalt rivers. One for all, no, my power. Pyre! He whipped his arm forward, screaming mentally. Smash! Nothing. The heat vanished. The fire died instantly in his veins. The ball flew from his hand with the pathetic force of a normal throw. It landed at 46 meters. Huh! Izuku stared at his hands. Where did it go? The heat, it just cut out. I erased it. Izuku turned. Aizawa stood there, his scarf floating around him as if caught in an updraft. His hair was standing on end. His eyes glowed a piercing, angry red. That entrance exam, Aizawa said, his voice dripping with disdain. It was completely irrational. Even you, a kid with a quirk that eats him alive, were allowed in. Aizawa walked closer, the scarf moving like a living serpent. I saw the footage. You destroyed the zero-pointer, but you were incapacitated. You saved one person, but you became a victim yourself. I was trying to save. And then what? Aizawa cut him off, stepping into Izuku's personal space. Who saves you after you burn out? Do you expect the other heroes to drop everything to extinguish you? You're a liability, Midoriya. You have the same reckless passion as All Might, but you lack his durability. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. There is nothing sadder than a hero who cannot save himself. If you use that power to break your arm again, I will expel you on the spot. I don't want to watch a student commit slow suicide in my class. He blinked. His hair fell. The red glow faded. I've returned your quirk. You have 2 attempts left. Hurry up and get it over with. Aizawa walked back to the sidelines, looking bored again. Izuku stood in the circle, trembling. He's right. The realization was colder than any ice. He's absolutely right. If I use the Azure Flash, I break. If I break, I'm useless. I can't just be a cannon. I have to be a soldier. Hey, is he okay? Ida whispered. Looks like he got scolded, Bakugo scoffed. Serves him right. His quirk is trash anyway. It hurts him. In the back of the group, Todoroki watched silently. He knew about fire. He knew about fire that hurt the user. His father, Endeavor, had obsessed over it. Blue flame, Todoroki thought. Hotter than my father's, but his body is weak. Like mine. Izuku picked up the ball. Think. Think like a nerd. Think like the boy who analyzed every hero for 10 years. My problem is recoil and heat damage to the skin. If I blast from my palm, I burn my hand. If I blast from my shoulder, I burn my torso. I need a focal point. A nozzle. He remembered the beach. The safe. The steam venting. Don't be a bomb. Be a jet. Izuku widened his stance. He didn't wind up for a pitch. Instead, he adopted a martial arts stance, his right arm chambered at his hip, holding the ball. He closed his eyes. Focus the heat. Not everywhere. Just the elbow. He pushed the thermal energy into his right tricep. He compressed it. Condensed it. Pressure. Build the pressure. Midoriya is taking a while, Kirishima muttered. He's gonna fail, Bakugo smirked. Izuku's eyes snapped open. They glowed with a faint blue luminescence. He threw the ball, but not with his shoulder. As his arm extended, he released the valve on the back of his elbow. Jet burn piston. Hiss crack. A concentrated, needle-thin jet of blue plasma erupted from his elbow, lasting only a millisecond. The force was immense. It acted like a piston in an engine, snapping his forearm forward with blinding speed. The ball left his fingertips at supersonic velocity. Boom! A sonic boom echoed across the field. The ball vanished into the sky, leaving a trail of distorted air. Izuku stood there, his arm extended. Smoke curled from his elbow. The sleeve of his gym uniform had melted away at the joint, revealing the bandage underneath, which was scorched black. But his arm wasn't broken. His fingers weren't purple. He clenched his fist. It hurt, a stinging, searing pain like touching a hot stove, but the bones were intact. The muscle was functional. I can still fight. Aizawa looked at the device. He raised his eyebrows, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his face. He turned the screen to the class. 705.3 meters. He beat Bakugo by 0.1 meters. Siro shouted. Izuku turned to Aizawa, clutching his smoking elbow, tears of pain and relief in his eyes. He forced a smile, a terrified, manic, determined smile. Sensei. Izuku gasped, steam puffing from his mouth. I'm still standing. Aizawa stared at him. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. So you are. Combustion. The silence was shattered by a roar. DKU. Katsuki Bakugo wasn't thinking. He was reacting. A primal circuit in his brain had just been fried. Deku, the pebble, The quirkless loser, the glass doll, had just beaten him. With fire. With a better explosion. You bastard! Tell me how you did that. You were hiding this the whole time? Bakugo launched himself at Izuku, explosions popping in his hands. He was going to kill him. He was going to grab him by the throat and burn the truth out of him. Izuku flinched, raising his injured arm defensively. I can't take a hit. My heat is too high. Suddenly, Bakugo's scarf went tight. He gagged, falling backward as the capture tape wrapped around him like a python. What the? Bakugo struggled. Stop using your quirks unauthorized, Aizawa said, his hair floating again. He was holding the scarf tight. My eyes are getting dry. Don't make me use my quirk so much. Let me go! Bakugo thrashed, glaring at Izuku. You tricked me. You've been laughing at me for years. I wasn't. Izuku shouted back, stepping behind Aizawa. I didn't ask for this power, Kaken. It burns. I'm just trying to learn how to use it without dying. Aizawa yanked the scarf, pulling Bakugo off balance. We're wasting time. Next up, he released Bakugo. The blonde boy stood there, chest heaving, staring at Izuku with a mix of hatred and something else, confusion. The blue flames. The scars. It didn't make sense. If Deku had this power, why was he always so weak? As Izuku walked back to the group, the class parted slightly, giving him space. They could feel the heat radiating off him. He was like a walking space heater. That was incredible. Uraraka whispered, though she stayed a foot away. Your arm. It's fine, Izuku lied. His elbow felt like it was being dipped in acid. He surreptitiously pressed a button on his belt, releasing a burst of coolant into the sleeve. A hiss of steam escaped his collar. He looked up and locked eyes with Shoto Todoroki. The dual-haired boy hadn't said a word. He was staring at Izuku's elbow, at the melted fabric and the blackened bandage. Blue fire, Todoroki thought. It destroys everything it touches. Even the user. He looked at his own left hand, the fire side he refused to use. He uses it, Todoroki realized. He uses a fire that eats him alive, just to get a higher score. Is he insane? Or is he just like him? Todoroki turned away, his expression cold. It doesn't matter. I will crush him with ice. I will reject that heat. The verdict. The sun was setting by the time the tests were done. The class gathered around Aizawa for the results. Izuku felt sick. His body ached. He was dehydrated. His heat levels were critical. The total scores, Aizawa said, projecting a hologram. Izuku scanned the list from the bottom up. 21. Minoru Mineta. 20. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. Please. Not last. Anything but last. He opened his eyes. 16. Izuku Midoriya. He wasn't last. He wasn't first, or even in the top 10. But he wasn't last. By the way, Aizawa said, turning off the hologram. I was lying about the expulsion. Huh? The class erupted. It was a logical ruse to bring out your upper limits. Aizawa grinned, looking far too pleased with himself. That was obvious, Momo Yayorozu, the ponytail girl, said with a sigh. If you thought about it calmly, I didn't think it was obvious at all. Mineta wept on the ground. Izuku sagged, his knees giving out. He didn't fall, though. Kirishima caught him by the shoulder. Easy there, stovepipe, Kirishima laughed. You look like you're about to melt. I might, Izuku chuckled weakly. Midoriya. Aizawa was standing in front of him. The class quieted down. Go to the nurse's office, Aizawa said, handing him a slip. Have recovery girl look at that elbow. And tomorrow. Aizawa paused. He looked at the boy who was steaming in the cool evening air. Bring a better cooling system. You're heating up my classroom. Izuku beamed. Yes, sir. The shadow. As the students filed out, heading back to the changing rooms, Izuku lingered for a moment to drink water. Midoriya. Izuku turned. Shoto Todoroki stood there. The setting sun cast his face in shadow, highlighting the burned scar over his left eye. Todoroki-kun? Izuku asked. Did you need something? Todoroki stared at him, his heterochromatic eyes unreadable. Your fire, Todoroki said flatly. It's blue. Yes, Izuku rubbed his neck. It's a mutation. Dr. Tsubasa calls it pyre. It's hot, Todoroki continued. Hotter than normal fire. Hotter than Endeavor's. Izuku flinched at the name of the number 2 hero. I guess? I try not to compare. You hurt yourself when you use it, Todoroki stated. Why do you use it? Why? Izuku blinked. Because I want to be a hero. It's the only power I have. Even if it hurts, I have to make it work. Todoroki looked at Izuku's bandaged arms. For a moment, a flicker of something, maybe memory, maybe pity, crossed his face. You're playing a dangerous game, Todoroki said softly. Fire consumes. If you aren't careful, there won't be anything left of you to be a hero. He turned and walked away, the ice on his right side leaving a faint frost on the pavement. Izuku watched him go, a strange chill settling over him despite his internal heat. Volatile elements, Izuku thought. This whole class is full of them. He looked at his hand. A tiny wisp of blue flame flickered on his fingertip, dancing in the twilight. And I might be the most unstable one of all. The afternoon sun filtered through the high windows of UA, casting long, geometric shadows across the polished floors. For most students, the transition from the classroom to the practical heroics course was a moment of excitement. For Izuku Midoriya, it was a transition into a blast furnace. I am coming through the door like a normal person, the voice boomed, rattling the frames of the windows. All Might, clad in his Silver Age costume, marched into the room with a cape that defied physics and a smile that defied fear. The class erupted. It's All Might. He's really teaching us. Look at that Silver Age design. So retro. Izuku felt a familiar flutter in his chest, a mix of fanboy adoration and the crushing weight of expectation. He glanced down at his desk. His hands were still wrapped in light compression bandages, hiding the raw, pink skin from yesterday's ball throw. Hero basic training. All Might announced, striking a pose that highlighted his massive biceps. The class that will put you through the ringer to mold you into the foundations of society. And today, we're jumping right into the deep end. He held up a card with bold red letters. Combat training, combat. Bakugo's voice came from the front row, low and hungry. Training, Izuku finished, swallowing a lump in his dry throat. And to go with that, All Might pointed to the wall, which began to slide open, revealing rows of numbered suitcases. You need these. Costumes made based on your Quirk registrations and requests you sent in before school started. Yeah! The class cheered, grabbing their cases and rushing toward the changing rooms. Izuku walked slowly to his case, number 16. He held the handle, feeling the cold metal. Inside wasn't just a costume. It was a containment unit. A second skin designed to keep him from turning into ash. I asked for heat resistance, Izuku thought. I asked for venting? I asked for survival. Ground Beta. The testing ground was a mock city, a sprawling labyrinth of concrete and steel that looked disturbingly real. The students emerged from the tunnel, a parade of vibrant colors and unique designs. They say the clothes make the man, young men and ladies. All Might beamed. Be fully aware, from now on, you are heroes. He scanned the class. Looking good, everyone. Very cool, Deku? Izuku turned. Uraraka stood there, adjusting her suit, a pink and black skin-tight outfit with large, rounded boots. She looked a little flushed. I should have been more specific with my design request, she said, covering her face. It's really skin-tight, somewhat embarrassing. I think it looks great. Izuku stammered, immediately averting his eyes to the pavement. It suits your Quirk. Aerodynamic, thanks. Whoa, look at you. She circled him. You look like a tactical stove? Izuku rubbed the back of his neck. His costume was a far cry from the bright spandex of his peers. It was utilitarian, bordering on industrial. The base was a heavy, fireproof black bodysuit made of a thick, woven Kevlar ceramic hybrid. Over his chest, shoulders, and thighs were plates of matte green armor. But the most distinct features were the vents, running along his spine, the back of his calves, and specifically designed ridges on his forearms and elbows were mechanical shutters, heat sinks. A metallic collar around his neck displayed a small digital readout, 37.5 degrees Celsius. He wore a mouth guard that looked like a respirator, designed to filter superheated air so he wouldn't scorch his lungs when breathing near his own flames. It's the Type Alpha heatsink suit, Izuku mumbled through the mask, his voice slightly filtered. The support company said it's experimental. It's supposed to open the vents automatically when my surface temp hits 40 degrees. So cool. Uraraka beamed. Hey Deku. The air temperature seemed to drop, despite the sun. Izuku turned to see Katsuki Bakugo standing 10 feet away. Bakugo's costume was pure aggression. A black tank top, baggy pants, and massive, grenade-shaped gauntlets on his arms. But it wasn't the costume that scared Izuku. It was the eyes. Bakugo wasn't yelling. He wasn't screaming insults. He was staring at Izuku with a cold, analytical hatred. He looked at the vents on Izuku's suit. He looked at the respirator. You're geared up for war, Bakugo said quietly. Let's see if you don't melt inside that tin can. All Might cleared his throat, drawing the attention back to the center. Now, let's get started. The scenario is simple. Villains have hidden a nuclear weapon somewhere in the hideout. The heroes must secure it or capture the evildoers within the time limit. He held up a yellow box. Teams will be decided by lottery. Is that really how we're doing it? Ida asked, looking like a knight in white armor. Pros often have to team up with heroes from other agencies on the fly. Izuku explained. It tests adaptability. I see. As expected of UA, All Might began drawing balls. Team A. Izuku Midoriya and Ochako Uraraka. Yay! We're a team! Uraraka cheered. Izuku felt a wave of relief. At least he was with someone nice. Team D. Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Ida. Izuku froze. The relief vanished, replaced by a cold dread that settled in his gut. He looked across the crowd. Bakugo was already looking at him. A predatory grin slowly spread across the blonde's face. First matchup. All Might announced, plunging his hand into two boxes labeled Hero and Villain. Heroes. Team A. Villains. Team D. The universe, Izuku decided, had a very specific vendetta against him. The binary star system. The monitor room was dark, illuminated by dozens of screens showing the interior of the concrete building. The rest of Class 1A gathered around, watching with bated breath. This is going to be intense, Kirishima muttered. Bakugo looks like he wants to murder Midoriya, and Midoriya looks like he's walking to the gallows. Inside the building, on the 5th floor, the villains were setting up. Tenya Ida tapped the papier-mâché bomb. Now, Bakugo, we must approach this with a villainous mindset. We need to secure the perimeter and, hey! Bakugo stood by the door, his back to Ida. He was flexing his fingers in the grenade gauntlets. Where are you going? Ida asked. The strategy is to guard the weapon. You guard the toy, Bakugo growled. I'm going to crush the nerd. That is not the objective. We are a team. He has a quirk, Bakugo interrupted, his voice tight. For 10 years, he walked behind me, looking at the ground. And all that time, he was hiding a quirk that beats mine. A quirk that burns hotter. He looked down on me. Bakugo turned, his eyes burning with a manic intensity. I'm going to remind him why he belongs on the ground. He kicked the door open and stalked into the corridor. Outside, Izuku and Uraraka stood before the building blueprints. Detailed map, Izuku mumbled, his finger tracing the corridors. There are multiple entry points. But knowing Kaken, he's going to come straight for us. Uraraka guessed. He's going to come straight for me, Izuku corrected. He looked at Uraraka. Uraraka-san, listen. Kaken, he's amazing. His combat instincts, his reaction time, his power, he's a genius. But right now, he's fixated. He won't care about the bomb. He won't care about the timer. He only cares about beating me. Izuku clenched his gloved fists. The digital readout on his collar beeped, 37.8 degrees Celsius. Anxiety was warming him up. I'll draw his fire, Izuku said. I'll keep him busy. You find the weapon. Use your zero gravity to secure it. But can you fight him? Uraraka asked, worried. You said your quirk hurts you. I don't have to beat him, Izuku said, pulling his respirator mask up over his nose and mouth. His green eyes narrowed. I just have to survive him. Start! All Might's voice echoed over the loudspeakers. Izuku and Uraraka entered through a first-floor window. The interior was dim, dusty, and smelled of stale concrete. They moved silently through the hallways, checking corners. Think like Kaken, Izuku told himself. He's impatient. He won't wait on the 5th floor. He'll intercept us at a choke point. They reached a T-junction. Duck! Izuku yelled. He shoved Uraraka to the side just as an explosion roared from around the corner. Boom! Smoke and debris filled the hallway. Out of the cloud, a figure launched itself, propelled by sparks. DKU! Bakugo flew through the smoke, a right hook primed with an explosion aimed directly at Izuku's head. Izuku didn't panic. He had watched this move 1,000 times in the playground, in the park, in his nightmares. He leads with a right swing. Izuku stepped into the guard. He didn't use fire. He used leverage. He grabbed Bakugo's wrist with his left hand, ducked under the swing, and grabbed Bakugo's shoulder with his right. What? Bakugo's eyes widened. Using Bakugo's own momentum, Izuku pivoted and slammed him into the concrete floor. Slam! The impact knocked the wind out of Bakugo. You always lead with a big right hook to start the fight, Izuku rasped through his mask. I've analyzed your moves for years, Kaken. In my notebooks. The ones you burned. Bakugo lay on the ground for a split second, stunned. Deku grabbed him? Deku, read him? You! Bakugo's hands began to crackle. You little stalker! He kicked up, firing an explosion from his feet to right himself. He swung his left hand. Izuku backpedaled. Uraraka, go! Now! Uraraka scrambled to her feet. But, go! She nodded and sprinted down the adjacent hallway toward the stairs. Bakugo tried to chase her. Oh no you don't, round face! He aimed a blast at her retreating back. Hiss crack. A needle-thin beam of blue fire shot past Bakugo's face, singeing his hair. It impacted the wall next to him, melting a fist-size hole in the concrete instantly. Bakugo froze. He turned back to Izuku. Izuku stood there, his right arm extended, his pointer finger smoking. The vent on his forearm hissed, releasing a puff of white steam. Look at me, Izuku said. His voice was shaking, but his stance was firm. I'm your opponent. Bakugo stared at the melted concrete. Then he stared at Izuku. A vein popped in his forehead. So you finally want to use it, Bakugo whispered. That fire, it's disgusting. It's the color of a gas stove. It's a tool, not a weapon. It's power, Izuku retorted. And I'm going to use it to become a hero. Then burn. Bakugo lunged. The observation room. Whoa! Did you see that move? Kaminari shouted. Midoriya judo flipped Bakugo. But Bakugo is angry now, Sero noted. Those explosions are getting bigger. On the screen, the fight was a blur. Bakugo was relentless. A whirlwind of kinetic energy and fire. He was using his explosions to change direction in midair, bouncing off walls to attack from impossible angles. Izuku was on the defensive. He was dodging, weaving, and rolling. Every time he moved, faint trails of blue light followed him, burst from his elbows and calves to accelerate his dodges. Why isn't Midoriya attacking? Ashido asked. He has that crazy laser fire, right? He can't, Todoroki said quietly from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look at the dual-haired boy. Look at the environment, Todoroki pointed at the screen. Bakugo's explosions create shockwaves and scorch marks. But Midoriya's fire, look at the wall he missed earlier. The camera zoomed in on the hole. It was glowing red at the edges. Molten concrete dripped down like wax. It melted, Yayorozu gasped. The temperature required to liquefy concrete instantly is over 1,500 degrees Celsius, Todoroki finished. Midoriya's flame is plasma. If he hits Bakugo directly with that, he won't just knock him out. He'll kill him. The class went silent. He's fighting with a handicap, Kirishima realized. He's trying to win without vaporizing his friend. They are not friends, Aizawa muttered from his corner, his eyes glued to the screen. They are binary stars. Two volatile forces trapped in each other's gravity. And one of them is about to go critical. The corridors. Stop running, you coward! Bakugo blasted around a corner, obliterating a storage locker. Izuku skidded backward, shielding his face with his armored forearms. Temp, 39.2 degrees Celsius. I'm not running! Izuku shouted. I'm drawing you away. Don't look down on me. Bakugo roared. He closed the distance in a blink. He grabbed Izuku's shoulder, his fingers digging into the armor. Where were you hiding this? When we were kids? When I fell in the river? Were you laughing at me then too? Boom. Point blank range. The explosion threw Izuku down the hallway. He crashed into a wall, the breath driven from his lungs. His armor plate on the shoulder was blackened and cracked. I wasn't hiding it. Izuku coughed, struggling to his feet. I didn't have it. It manifested late. And when it did, he held up his hand. The glove was smoking. It started eating me. Bakugo paused. He watched as the vents on Izuku's suit opened with a mechanical whir. Steam poured out of the suit, enveloping Izuku in a white cloud. It hurts, Izuku confessed, tears pricking the corners of his eyes. Every time I use it. It feels like I'm holding a piece of the sun. Mom cried every day. The doctor said I was broken. Izuku looked up, his eyes burning green through the steam. But I saw All Might. And I saw you. You were always so strong, Kaken. You were always winning. I wanted to be like that. I wanted to stand in the ring, even if it meant burning to ash. Bakugo's expression twisted. It wasn't pity. It was insult. You wanted to be like me? Bakugo scoffed. With a self-destructive quirk like that. You think hurting yourself makes you a hero? That's just masochism, Deku. Bakugo raised his right arm. He reached for the pin on his gauntlet. If you want to burn so badly, then let's see if you can handle my heat. Young Bakugo, stop. All Might's voice crackled over the comms. Are you trying to kill him? He won't die if he dodges. Bakugo yelled back. The gauntlet stores his nitroglycerin sweat, Izuku realized, his eyes widening in horror. Inside the storage tank, that's a massive shaped charge. They were in a narrow hallway. If Bakugo fired that, the blast wave would have nowhere to go but straight at Izuku. And behind Izuku were the load-bearing pillars of the north wing. If I dodge, the building collapses. If I dodge, the blast goes up the elevator shaft and hits Uraraka. Izuku planted his feet. I can't dodge. Eat this. Bakugo pulled the pin. Click. Time seemed to slow. The spark ignited the reservoir. A blinding orange light began to expand from the gauntlet's nozzle. Izuku took a deep breath. The air tasted of ozone. Temp, 40 degrees Celsius. Limits removed. Izuku didn't aim at Bakugo. He aimed at the space between them. He clapped his hands together, fingers splayed, creating a triangular aperture. Pyre form, cobalt wall. Aya. Izuku screamed as he unleashed everything. It wasn't a beam. It was a fan. A deluge of blue fire erupted from his hands, expanding instantly to fill the entire width and height of the hallway. Boom! The two forces collided. Orange explosion met blue plasma. The sound wasn't a bang. It was a thump felt in the chest, followed by the screeching of tearing metal. The air pressure in the hallway skyrocketed. The windows along the entire side of the building blew out instantly, showering the mock city in glass. In the monitor room, the screens went white. The signal cut out. Did they die? The dust began to settle. The hallway was a ruin. The floor was blackened. The walls were stripped of paint and plaster, revealing the rebar underneath. Bakugo stood panting, his arm numb from the recoil. He stared forward, his eyes wide. The blast hadn't hit him. It had been stopped. 10 feet away, Izuku Midoriya was still standing, but just barely. The cobalt wall had acted as a shield, incinerating the explosive wave before it could pass. But the cost was catastrophic. Izuku's mask had melted off one side of his face. His costume, the expensive, heat-resistant armor, was gone from his forearms. In its place was a fused mess of melted synthetic fabric and blackened skin. The vents on his back were glowing cherry red. The digital collar was flashing error. Izuku swayed. His arms hung uselessly at his sides, smoke rising from them in thick gray plumes. You! Bakugo whispered. You blocked it? Izuku didn't answer him. He looked up past Bakugo, toward the hole in the ceiling that the blast updraft had created. Uraraka-san. Izuku rasped, his voice barely a whisper. Now, the 5th floor. Uraraka was hiding behind a pillar. The floor beneath her shook violently. Midoriya-kun! She cried out. Ida was distracted. What on earth was that? Did the building just explode? He did it, Uraraka realized. She heard Izuku's voice over the comms, faint and crackly. Now, the explosion had blown a hole through the floor in the center of the room. A massive updraft of hot air was rushing up from the floor below. Uraraka looked at the debris. A concrete pillar had been knocked loose. Home run comet! She slapped the pillar. Zero gravity. She hugged the pillar, aimed it like a battering ram, and jumped into the updraft. Whoa! Ida turned. The hot air caught the weightless pillar and Uraraka, shooting them across the room at high speed. Comet home run! She released the gravity on the pillar just as she flew over Ida's head. The pillar crashed down, blocking Ida's path. Uraraka tucked and rolled, crashing into the papier-mâché bomb. Captured! She screamed. Hero team. Wins! All Might's voice boomed, though it sounded shaken. The aftermath. Down in the hallway, Izuku heard the announcement. We won. His eyes rolled back. He tipped forward. Bakugo stepped forward instinctively, but he stopped. The heat radiating from Izuku was intense. He could feel it from 5 feet away. Izuku hit the floor. Medic! Bakugo yelled, his voice cracking. Hey! Someone get down here! He's burning up. Bakugo looked at his own gauntlet. It was hot, but intact. Then he looked at Izuku's arms. The armor had fused to the flesh. The smell was sickening, burned hair and cooked meat. Why? Bakugo asked the unconscious boy. Why go that far for a stupid practice match? But he knew the answer. Because that's what a hero does. The nurse's office. The lights were harsh. The smell of antiseptic was strong, trying to mask the scent of char. Recovery girl stood on a stool, peeling away the remnants of the Type Alpha suit with surgical tweezers. This is foolishness, she hissed. Absolute foolishness. All Might stood in the corner, deflated in his skinny form. He looked like a ghost haunting his own crime scene. Is he? All Might started. He's cooking his organs, Tashinori, recovery girl snapped. Look at this. She pointed to a thermal scan on the monitor. Izuku's core temperature was still 39 degrees Celsius, an hour after the fight. His kidneys and liver were showing signs of heat stress. The external burns I can heal, she said, applying a green glowing gel to Izuku's ravaged arms. The skin began to knit together, the black char flaking off to reveal angry pink scar tissue. But the internal damage? The cumulative stress on his heart? If he keeps fighting like this, he won't make it to graduation. He'll have heart failure at 20. All Might gripped the door frame. He blocked a blast that would have leveled the building. He shouldn't have had to. Recovery girl threw a scalpel into a metal tray. That boy Bakugo, using a lethal weapon in a practice match? And this one, reacting with lethal force to stop it. They are both insane. Izuku groaned. His eyes fluttered open. Mom? He mumbled. No, dear. It's recovery girl, she said, her voice softening. Here. Drink this. She held a straw to his lips. It was a freezing cold saline solution. Izuku drank greedily. Did we win? Izuku whispered. Yes. All Might stepped forward. You won, young Midoriya. But at a terrible cost. Izuku looked at his arms. They were bandaged again. Thicker this time. I didn't kill him, Izuku said, relief washing over him. I controlled it. I made a wall, not a spear. You melted your costume to your skin, recovery girl said bluntly. We had to cut it off. You have 2nd-degree burns on your chest and 3rd-degree on your forearms. Again, she poked him in the forehead. Listen to me closely, Sonny. You are not an engine. You are a human being. You cannot just vent everything. Someday, the fire won't vent. It will just burn you up. Izuku closed his eyes. I know. But I couldn't let him hurt Uraraka. The review. Later that afternoon, the class gathered back in the classroom. Izuku was absent, resting in the infirmary. Bakugo sat at his desk, staring at the wood grain, silent. Let's review the match, All Might said, his usual energy dampened. Who was the MVP of this battle? Momo Yaoyorozu raised her hand. It was Ida, she stated. Eh? Uraraka blinked. But I captured the bomb. And Deku stopped Bakugo. Midoriya's plan was reckless, Momo explained, her voice analytical but tinged with concern. He engaged an enemy he knew he couldn't beat without self-harm. He caused massive structural damage to the facility. If that had been a real building with civilians, the cobalt wall might have weakened the supports and caused a collapse. She turned to Bakugo, and Bakugo acted on personal grudges, abandoning the objective and using a lethal weapon indoors. That is disqualifying behavior for a hero. She pointed to the screen where Ida was shown trying to contact Bakugo and guarding the bomb until the very end. Ida was the only one who adapted to the scenario and prioritized the mission without excessive force or negligence. The class was silent. It was a harsh truth. Correct. All Might gave a thumbs up, though it felt forced. Young Ida was the most grounded. But young Midoriya and young Uraraka showed great spirit. Bakugo didn't say anything. He just clenched his fist. The heat of the blue fire was still phantom burning on his face. He blocked it, Bakugo thought. He took my strongest shot and treated it like a breeze, but he nearly died doing it. Sunset. Izuku walked out of the school gates as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in oranges and purples. His arm was in a sling. He felt drained, hollowed out. Deku. Izuku stopped. Bakugo was waiting by the gate. He wasn't slouching. He was standing straight. Kaken? Bakugo didn't turn around. You won, Bakugo said. The words sounded like they were being dragged out of him over broken glass. On the hero's side, you won. He turned his head. His eyes were red, rimmed with frustration and tears he refused to shed. But don't think this changes anything. I'm going to be the #1 hero. I'm going to surpass All Might. And to do that, I have to beat you. Not when you're holding back. Not when you're trying to save me. Bakugo pointed a finger at him. Next time, fight me with the intent to win. If you burn up, that's your problem. I won't lose to a suicide bomber. He turned and marched away, stomping down the street. Izuku watched him go. A small smile touched his lips. It was the first time Bakugo had acknowledged him as a rival, not a pebble. I won't burn up, Izuku whispered to the wind. I'll learn to handle the heat. Just you wait, Kaken. He looked at his hand. Even through the bandages, he could feel the pulse of the blue flame, waiting, hungry. The binary star system, All Might had called them, 2 stars orbiting each other. One burning orange, one burning blue. I just hope, Izuku thought, that we don't destroy the galaxy when we collide next time.